Hi, Christopher. Clearly, you understand the concepts associated with two-point perspective. I think I reviewed this very same version in a draft review. One question I have for you is, how could you add interest or make the composition a little more exciting? And I will note that there are some lines that have been overdrawn. You've overshot the corner. It'd be good to tidy those up. Now, let's see. With regard to your second drawing, uh, you know, I would like to see a photo reference for something like this with future. I would like to know that you are using a photo reference. There are a lot of curiosities here that make this seem a little less than believable. First, the windows are very wide on the facade, as is the door, um, which is leading me to believe that this is entirely invented, and it would be better to refer to an actual scene. Second, your VP on the right is very close to the rear end of the house, which is making the perspective exceedingly exaggerated. Hi, Dana. I believe I looked at the same version before for your assignment too, and I probably noted there that I feel that there's not a need for ink with these drawings. In fact, it often creates more problems than it solves. When you draw with ink against a ruler, oftentimes the ink smears. You may like to explore different grades of pencils. The B pencils are going to be soft lead pencils, and the H ones will be hard lead pencils, and the higher the number, the harder or softer the pencil will be. Um, Now, taking a look at your second drawing, it's nice to see it in comparison with the photo. I'm wondering about the length of the house in relation to its width. I'm thinking it might be less wide, and um, that might solve some of the issues you're dealing with. For instance, if we take a look at those windows, they are vertical rectangles rather than squares. And you may notice that in some of your classmates' cases, I have pointed out how having the VP close to the structure makes the perspective exaggerated. Hi, Christina. In this first piece, I just wanted to mention that I enjoy your investigation of matters such as creating a sort of tunnel through a rectangular form or notching a rectangular form. Nice investigation. Now, looking at your second drawing, I am longing to see the VP and the guidelines extended to it. I like the way that you're dealing with the road curving and the narrowness of the road in the distance. Well, hi, Sarah. I just commented on Christina's use of forms in her first drawing that have notches or tunnels through them, and of course you're investigating that too. And it's a lovely form that you have, that hovering one top left. The stair-stepped ones are good too. I believe I've looked at this very same file before. One further thought on it is, what do you think about the location of shadows on the stepped forms? It doesn't seem as though the hovering ones would be directly above them, thereby they would not be casting shadows on the surfaces. Generally, the plane parallel with sky is going to be illuminated. Now, looking at your second drawing, I'm having a hard time understanding how this was made directly in relation to this assignment. As I was saying to Christina, I would like to see guidelines that lead to VPs, which may mean that for such a drawing, your structure itself should be smaller. Right, Nicole, looking at your first drawing, at first I was a little confused looking at the top right shape. I was actually seeing it reversed with the smaller rectangle in the foreground. Now, I like the way that you're letting shapes be transparent. Um, One inconsistency with all that is that this particular one I'm talking about overlaps the vertical one in center. And there we don't see through the first to the second. I suppose that's the only instance where the overlapping occurs in that manner. Now, I'd like to take this occasion to propose that Far off lines might be drawn more lightly to increase the effect of perspective. Now, where is that already working in your drawing? If we look at the bottom left form, we can see that the edge at bottom left on it is faint, and that's helping to create an illusion. Now, with your second drawing, thank you for showing us your process. One thing I'm looking for are the guidelines, which the assignment asked you to leave in. Oh, hi, Abram. I noticed that you've removed that one small boxy form from the form that I was suggesting. Looks like a periscope, the conglomerate of a couple of forms there. And, I wasn't saying that you ought to do that, but only that it was an oddity. And sometimes an oddity in a drawing is useful or creates a sense of character. I know there was another small area where there was an issue, and I see that you repaired that. Your second drawing looks very competent. I like the character you've given this barn, I guess it is. The peak of the roof is not an entirely straight line, which is often the case with barns. One thing I know you're missing is a road or a sidewalk, which was something the assignment asked for. Hi, Luz. This is a stunning and very creative solution with your first drawing. I'm enjoying it. An interesting matter is, how these forms hover in the foreground, the ones that are laced together. Now, with your second drawing, I'm not seeing a strong influence of the second point, the VP that would be off to the right. And I guess I'd say, it would be helpful to see where the VP is on the right to better judge. And if it is far off, its influence will be negligible. I'd like you to check the first cupola, the close one. I think that the bottom edge needs to be parallel to the bottom edge of the paper. That is the bottom edge of its roof on the near side. Hi, Claybert. This drawing looks quite competent. I'm enjoying the organic shape of the drive in the foreground, contrasting with the architecture here. Now, I'd like to take a look at your stairs. Is the plane of the stair seeming to tip forward, up at the back and down in the front? I believe that that top plane needs to appear more horizontal, and you'll want to take a look at its edge and maybe even make that a horizontal line. Maybe the door is a tad wide for this sort of structure. Is the light a little short? Just a couple little questions for you, and we've already discussed your other drawing. Well, hi, Belinda. What you've got going in the first drawing here is actually 3 points, but this is not our standard 3-point perspective. You'll see we get into that here in week 3. I would like to take the left half of this and count it as your work for this assignment. Notice that when you put the two VPs real close together like they are at right, you get an exaggerated looking drawing. Now, regarding your second drawing, I think you have a general idea. However, it hasn't successfully been applied to the sidewalk, and that's something that we have to look at. I would say in future, let your structure be smaller so that you can fit your VPs and your guidelines on the page, and that's going to help you immensely. Well, hi, Shilin. I'm really liking this first drawing. It's complicated and has some nice ideas. I need you to check the top 2 forms because the guidelines are not working for you there. You've added extra line segments that shouldn't be necessary both on top and side of those hovering boxes. I might send you an email about this. Now, with the second drawing, it's hard to see what you have here. I have taken a look at the file itself in addition to what I put here in the drafts review, and I'd like you to photo this and send a new copy to me. With both of these drawings, the resolution is not excellent, and the photos are slightly blurry. Please take your photos during day so that you'll have good lighting and lighting that's even.